Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Grace in the Marketplace. And man, I'm excited. Tonight it's on. We're continuing where we left off last Wednesday. Trevor is still here, our financial expert. And just some quick disclaimers. This is not official or professional financial advice. This is just principles from the Word of God that will help you navigate your financial space. Amen. And so, just a quick recap of what we talked about last week. Trevor, welcome one more time. And hey, we're excited. After the last broadcast, man, I had a lot of people come to me saying, hey, why didn't you advertise this to the entire church so we can have a lot more people hearing this stuff? And we tried to do that this week. So, hey, I'm hoping that we're going to have a lot more people listening to this financial advice. And also, I would like to encourage all of you who are watching tonight to subscribe and like the page, whichever platform you're watching from. Make sure you subscribe and like the page. And also, if you can share the broadcast with your family and friends. Man, I'm telling you, there's so much good content that's coming from this broadcast that I believe will be of help to your family and to your friends. And so Trevor is here with us. And just a quick recap of what we talked about, last Wednesday, if you don't mind, and then we'll get into the business of today.
Sure. Thanks, Pastor T. I think last week we covered quite a bit, what we could in 45 minutes or so. Obviously, there's so much out there, but we can't cover everything. But I think the two key things that we covered last week, number one is we spoke about debt.
Yeah.
And we said, the Bible is very clear. It says that the borrower is a servant to the lender.
Yeah.
All right. So we spoke about debt and we spoke about financial discipline. Yeah. And the preposition there was that number one is that you must always try and live within your means. All right. And then number two is, don't make purchases that gets you deeper and deeper into debt because you want to try and please someone else.
Yeah.
It always ends up not being, the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And what we know, I think you have covered, I remember in quite a number of services that, once your financial life is in, you are under so much strain, a lot of other areas in your lives are also affected.
Yeah, they begin to collapse.
Exactly. So many things begin to collapse.
Yeah.
It's just a reflection of the pressure that you were in. So I think the key recap number one is as much as you can, don't go into debt. Sometimes you have to take some debt, like to buy a house, because most of us can't afford to buy a house cash.
Yeah.
But don't go and buy a new Jordan shoes on debt.
If you don't have the cash, don't do it.
Don't buy it.
You can't afford it.
Yep.
And debt, I think you also classify debt into two groups. Good debt, which is, almost what you shared now about buying a house.
Yeah.
And also there's bad debt, which will just make you broke. It will make you poor.
Yep.
Things like buying clothes on debt, things like, getting a car with a balloon payment and just, overextending yourself in the area of debt can cause some real serious problems.
Yep.
And it makes you a servant.
But actually, so I think for the purpose of the listeners today, so someone might wonder, okay, what is too much, right? So what is too much? So mathematically speaking, once you spend more than 56% of your income per month paying off debt, mathematically speaking, you are in financial stress.
Wow. Did you hear that, guys?
56%.
56%.
But that is almost like the high end, right? So in as much, try and, if you can, try and make it below 30 or 20%.
And this includes your mortgage.
Yes.
This includes your car payment.
So
and things of that nature. It
so-
should be way below 56%.
it should be, so if you include mortgage and everything else, I mean, ideally, and this is just like some random figures, but
Yeah.
it should be not more than 35%. So you can't spend more than 35% of your monthly salary paying off debt.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, and so tonight we're moving on to what we are calling coming up with a financial game plan. You know, before you do anything in life, you actually need a game plan. If you are a fan of any sport, you know that coaches work on a game plan over, you know, a long period of time just to implement it in a 90-minute game. That's how important a game plan is. Every single one of us need a game plan. We need a roadmap of from where we are to where we want to go. And so talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. I think the best place to start is in Proverbs chapter number 29, verse 18. The Bible says, where there is no vision, my people perish. So God is saying, if you don't have a vision, and I mean, personally, I believe that you actually need a vision which is written down, right? So that you can articulate your vision quite well. But the Bible says, if there's no vision, you will perish. So today, right, we are going to talk about obviously developing your own vision, like for you in terms of from a financial perspective. And in the industry, they call it a financial plan. Right. So for most people, obviously, if you are not within the financial sector, the most ideal thing to do is for you to look for what we call a registered financial advisor, right? And what he or she will help you do is to draw up a financial plan, right? And so there are 4 components to a financial plan. And the first component is to articulate exactly where you are. Right. Where is your state, or where is the state of your finance as of today?
And so this is not by faith.
This is not
by this is actual, you know, money that you have in your hands.
Yes. So this is actual money that you have. So they will help you articulate the current state of your finances, right? And one thing, right, I just want to add on this point, and I think it really is applicable to us, especially us here in Africa, is that there's something that I like to call fixed financial commitments that are not necessarily like contractual, like a debt. For example, if you support your brother or your sister or your parents back in Zim, right, and you pay monthly school fees, right, that should almost look like it's a debt on your current financial, because it's a commitment that you'll be expected every single month to honor, right? So what the financial advisor helps you is they help you articulate comprehensively, right, your current starting point. So how much debt do you have? How many assets do you have? How much income do you make, and what do you use your income for, and everything. So and the purpose of this first component is just to give you a comprehensive picture of where you are today. So that's the first one.
And I think it's important because even when using a GPS system, you know, it always wants to know where you are.
Your current location.
Your current location is important, you know, and it maps a path from where you are. So I think this is a great way to start your financial planning. Exactly where are you? How much do you spend on debt? What kind of debt is it? You know, where are we at the moment? Do you have more month left more than money left every month? You know, where are you in terms of your financial status? And I think this helps for you to move out of that crisis so that you can start progressing towards stability.
Yep, definitely. And then the next, so we said there are 4 components. So the second one, right, is what we call, you have to define and prioritize, you know, what you want to achieve, right? And here, this is really individualized. For example, right, you can say, okay, we are planning to buy a house
Yeah.
in 3 or 4 or 5 years time, depending on whatever period. And as a couple, you can also say, I'm planning to go into business, so I'm planning to transition into business, right? And I think we spoke about it off air that especially people that are really entrepreneurial and they want to transition into business. But at a certain stage, like if you've got a family and you've got commitments, right, you can't just quit the next day, right? Because number one, it takes time for any business to really scale up and start producing income. But your bills, your school fees is still due, groceries is still due. So to I think we spoke about it and say if you are transitioning and if you really you're an entrepreneur and you're going to entrepreneurship, you should also actually say, what, I'm as a person I'm planning to transition into business, let's say in 2 years' time. So all this, so you can have a commitment around buying a house, around transition to business, around some other major purchases you want to do, right? It also even your long-term commitments to say, okay, we are planning to retire in 20, 30 years time, right? And we don't want to be black text to our children, right? So all these things, this is what happens when you are defining and prioritizing, the things that you want to achieve in the future.
And I've heard people say this, that you've got to live your life the way that no one else is, so that in the future you'll be able to live your life the way that no one else is. So you've got to make sacrifices today that no one is making, so that tomorrow you can live in the luxury that you would like to live. And so this is, I think, the importance of this, second path or second component of a good financial plan. Define your priorities and say, in 5 years' time, I want to start pursuing my purpose. In 5 years' time, I want to travel. In 5 years' time, I want to retire, or 20, 30 years' time, and start planning for it. But after you plan for it, then you start making some changes, to your lifestyle today, so that you can prepare for that a future that you want to live. And so there's going to be some sacrifices to be made.
All good things, they require some sacrifice. I think you spoke about last time when you're talking about how you transitioned away from full-time employment into full-time ministry, right? That it was a process.
It's a process.
It just didn't wake up for one day and say,
I could have, my wife wouldn't let me. And so I think it's for everybody. For us, the goal was to raise a big deposit for the house, so that when I go into full-time ministry, we won't have the house as a big burden in our books. And so for me, it was, we need to sacrifice everything, cut down on vacations and do what we have to do, so that we can raise this big deposit and really push down as much as we can our monthly commitment and our monthly mortgage fees. And that helped me transition into full-time ministry without a lot of pressure. And I believe that's part of, what we need to consider before you pursue your passion, your purpose, what you believe God has called you to do. So number 2 is to define and prioritize. And number 3.
So number 3 is where it gets a little bit, So number 3, we call it, you must crunch the number, or how much is enough, right? So what this means is that when you have got a specific goal, so you want to buy a house in 2 years' time and 3 years' time, and they need a deposit, right? For, let's say they need 150,000 rands for a deposit for a 1.5 million rand house, right? So the question is then, okay, if I want to make sure that by the end of the 2 years I've got sufficient deposit, right? So how much should I start saving today for the next 2 years, such that when the time comes, I do have the funds, right? So number 3 is it's really about number crunching, unfortunately. But the good thing about number 3 is that right now, because of access to the internet, there are so many calculators that are free that you can, find online, right? And they just help you to answer the question. So I said, I want to transition into business in 3 years' time, and we need to raise 400,000 before then. So the question is, how much should I start invest or saving every month for the next 3 years, so that I can achieve that particular goal? Right. So number 3 is almost like putting the numbers behind your objectives or your the things that you are targeting to achieve.
That's awesome. So it means you setting a target and you start shooting for that. So I think this is where it gets technical.
Yeah.
But like Trevor said that, there are many tools on the internet that can help you, figure it out. How much will I need for my retirement income? How much will I need for me to be able to, how much should I save for children? For university. Some of you, our kids are different from, our generation. When we were kids, our dreams were, the local university or the local college. With our kids, because of the internet, your kids are going to have big dreams. They're going to want to have to go and study abroad, study in a different location so they can learn cultures, so they can really do something different from what we did. And I believe that should be every parent's desire, is to see their kids do better than they did. And if we're going to do that, you also need to start crunching the numbers and really put down how much is enough when it comes to education for your kids, the kind of education that you envision them having.
Yep.
And part number 4.
So probably last point on number 3, I think Old Mutual, which is one of the most well-known brands in South Africa, they actually have got a calculator on their website.
Right.
So I think if you go online and you just type Old Mutual and then you say how much is enough, they've got a calculator there that you can simply use. It's free. You can just use it. It just helps you to answer the question, how much is enough?
Yeah, I think it's called the savings calculator. You can visit oldmutual.co.za. It's called the savings calculator. You'll be able to put all your dreams and desires in there and calculate how much you need to save.
Yep.
And component number 4 of this financial game plan.
So component number 4 now, this is...
By the way, before you go to component number 4, guys, if you have any questions, please pop them in the comment section. And I will ask Trevor to answer them before we wrap up the broadcast in about 15 minutes. And so if you have any burning questions, please pop them in the comment section, and we will attempt to answer those questions. Component number 4 of the game plan, the financial game plan.
So this is when the players actually go out and start playing, right? So after so much planning, there's only so much planning that you can do. So component number 4 is always about implementation.
Yeah.
And Pastor Tafara,
a good plan is nothing without
implementation. Right. Right. And I think even the Bible says faith without works is dead.
It's dead.
You must get to a point where you have to start implementing. So
they say an alive dog is better than a dead lion, right?
Yeah, definitely. So component number 4 really is really about implementation. So after you've dropped your plan, now you know how much you need to put aside every month. This is when you start implementing, right? So you implement and then you start tracking yourself or tracking the progress that you are making, right?
You get in the game.
And then now this is where you get in the game. And this is where, when you, let's say, end of month, you get your salary, it comes, you set aside some money, for the plan that you have defined above. Now the question is now, where do you place that money? Right? Do you leave it in your bank account?
Yeah.
Do you invest it in property? Do you invest it in bonds? Do you invest it in stock? So number 4, right? This is where the implementation starts, right? And this is where you start putting everything that you desire into practice. And then I think probably next week we might go into some of the nuances of this one, exactly in terms of how do you invest, where do you put the money, what are the things that you should think about, because there's so much I can call it conventional sayings or traditional sayings out there, right? That we need to unpack and talk about.
Yeah.
There are some people who believe that you must put your money under the pillow, right, for some reasons.
Yeah.
And they are quite adamant about it. There are some people that are adamant that you must put your money into property.
Yeah.
There are some people that have got different. Some say you must trade forex. There are so many other different, traditional sayings out there that probably next week we'll unpack.
That's awesome. And so, in your financial game plan, there's some questions that I'm gonna, throw at you. You talked a little bit about the emergency fund.
Yeah.
What is an emergency fund, and how can someone start saving up for that emergency fund, and let's say you want to, how long of an emergency fund does one require? You know, someone may be watching and thinking, hey, we need to start thinking about an emergency fund. And how long of should it be, and how much should someone put away, and where can you put it away? Because if it's an emergency fund and you put it in a fixed deposit, whatever, where you are penalized to withdraw it, it's not an emergency fund. And so how do you answer that? What is it first? And how long, and where can we put it?
So, I mean, I think as the name implies, it's an emergency fund. So what this means is this is when life happens. All right. When life happens, you can be, you know, driving from Muchedzi, back to Joburg, and then two of your tire punches, right? So this is when life happens. Or there can be a funeral in the family, right? Or there can be some medical bills that you didn't foresee, right? And your medical cover or medical aid doesn't cover everything, and they say to you, you must top up over and above. So this is essentially money that you set aside for when life happens, all right? And so traditionally, people used to say it must be 3 months. Some argued that it must be 6 months. Some argued that it must be 1 year. All right, and there is no one answer. And the reason is because people are at different stages in their lives. Right. All right. So there's no one answer. All right. But I think the most important fundamental point here is that you must set aside a small portion of your funds, right? Some can say, like, you can try and put aside 5% of your salary, right, into an emergency fund, right? And this money normally has to stay in as cash, because you need access to the money on a very, very short notice, without any penalties. The penalties, right? Without you having to pay penalties to access the money. So this money has to stay as cash in your bank account, right? How much do you need? I think, to me, is the more I think about it, it's less of the question. It's more about, you know, you developing a culture or setting aside some money, because over time, on an individual level, you start to get a good sense of, you know, when I have got X amount of cash on the side, it's normally enough to meet my personal, you know, emergencies when they come through. Because I don't like to put a specific number, because it really depends. So someone who is a single guy, all right, or a lady, for them 2 months might be enough. For someone with a family of 4 kids that are going to school, maybe 1 year is, you know, is what they need. So it's really, really depending on your own individual circumstances.
That's awesome. We have a quick question here from Prince Mohlapi, and he says, how can one estimate how much university will cost in 10 to 15 years from now?
I mean, so I think so. I'm thinking whether I should give the complicated answer or the simple answer.
Complicated always works.
So, I mean, the complicated answer is very simple, is that you can do 2 things. Number one, you can find out how much university is costing today. So that's the first thing. So let's say 100,000 rands. Right. So today, if you go on the UCT website, you can find a program. They say the cost of university is 100,000 rands. Right. And then the second thing that you need is you can look over the last 5 years and see how much was the tuition increasing per year. Right? So you can easily see, because they normally have got a table, right? So it shows you in 2016 they were charging 90,000, and then in 2017 they were charging 92,000. So you can see, you know, let's say inflation or the cost of tuition was increasing by 6%, right? So with those 2 numbers, right, you can easily estimate how much tuition will be in 15 years time.
So you can start forecasting.
Right? So it will be just, you know, 1 plus, you know, the increase, which is 6%, right, to the power of 15. Then you just multiply that by 100. So that will give you a good idea of how much university will be in 15 years time. But the easy answer, go to Old Mutual. They've got calculators. You can put it in there. It will do the work for you.
I think an even easier answer is if you look at everything in US dollar terms, because their inflation is usually very minimal. I think U.S. Colleges have been 41,000
Yep.
per annum for a long time now, and so this is per year, you know, and so if you want to save up for that, you'll probably not get a big jump in terms of the school fees increase. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think the bottom line with all of this that we are learning as well is that do not spend everything that comes in.
Yep.
The goal is to start thinking about the future. And sometimes as Christians, we don't think about the future. You know, we spend everything that comes in, and we hide behind faith. You know, I'll live by faith. But I think it's a godly principle to put away a portion of what you earn towards these strategic areas so that you can plan for your future.
Yep.
All right, and so that's what we're talking about today. And so in terms of serving, not serving, saving, in terms of saving,
Yeah.
in terms of saving money, right? In terms of saving money, there are different, ways to do it. There are
Yes.
different, like emergency fund, we're looking at 1 year,
Yes.
Medium investment is probably 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
And then long-term serving is
Yep.
probably for retirement, 10 to 15 years, or
Yes.
even when you're buying stock,
Yep.
it's probably, for long-term. And so what are some of I know we're going to get into it next week, but what are some of just a quick overview, 30,000 foot view of what we're going to be looking at next week in terms of these 3 different
Yes.
types of investment, of
Yes.
how you can actually put away your money in investment.
Sure. I think before I answer that, I think one of the key principles that I just want to highlight is this principle around risk and return,
Yeah.
right? And the principle is very simple. It simply says that for you to make more returns or for you to make more money, you should be willing to accept a higher level of risk.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the first principle. So now
Maybe before you even say that, let me just give our viewers some statistics in terms of people who directly own shares.
Yeah.
Now, this was in 2016,
Yeah.
when we did this. South Korea, the nation, in terms of people who actually participate in the stock market and who own shares, the nation, the population, 68% of the population actually participate in the
Yep.
stock market, which is quite high. And the second nation, which has also got a high percentage, is the USA, which is 52%, which means, the people in those countries don't spend everything. They're taking a portion and putting it and investing it somewhere. England is 38%.
Yep.
And Singapore is about 44%. Now listen to this. South Africa, we stand at 0.52%. Only less than 1% of the population directly own shares or are participating in the stock exchange, in the stock market. And that's what we're trying to open your eyes to see, that you can invest into the things that you're passionate about. You can invest into your future.
Yep.
And so 3 different levels. You were about to jump into that.
Yep.
Before we go into this question.
Sure. So from a 30,000 feet
Foot view.
right? So in the short term, which we said is below 1 year, right? This is where you put money that you need to really access, on very, 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 very quickly, right? Normally, this is either it's in your savings account, more bank savings account, or you can actually even do a 32-day account, right, where you can invest money for 32 days, and then they'll give you back. They'll give it back to you after 32 days, right? But this is normally there are also some instruments called money market. It's almost just investing money in your cash money, and then but the downside is that you don't get much in terms of returns, right? So your returns are relatively low. But the good side is that this cash that's in your savings account, like I said, what you said, if there's an emergency, you can easily get access to it, right? So that's the first one. And then now when we look at what we call the medium term, which is like your 3 to 5 years time, and this is for people that are looking to buy, especially like people that are looking to buy a house, right, that are looking to save up for, let's say, for a deposit in a 3 to 5 years time, right? These, you're normally looking at what we call like fixed income instruments, and one of the most effective one is, they call them the retail savings bonds in South Africa, and these are actually bonds that are issued by National Treasury here in South Africa. And here's the good news: anyone can just buy them.
Wow.
Online. So if you just go to National Treasury and you type retail savings bonds, it will come out there. You can easily, in the space of 5-10 minutes, you can easily invest your money in those in those retail savings bonds. And what I like about them is, number one, is the returns are quite attractive, right, for that period. And number two, it's extremely easy.
Right.
You can, like we said,
anybody can do it.
Anybody can do it. So just type in National Treasury retail savings bonds, just follow the link, and in 10 minutes you are done. And then the last one, which is the long term, which is like your 10, 15, 20 years. This is when you are looking to save for your kids to go to Harvard, or you are looking to save for your retirement. This is when we start going into investing in stocks. This is when you start going into investing in property. This is where, you have to take a much more long-term view. And the reason being that these investments, like stocks or property, they are quite risky, right? And therefore, you can't just invest in stock today and then next week. You're checking on the you're checking on the internet to see what happened to my stock. This is long term, guys. You see, when you get into the long, and I like the fact that you're bringing it up as a long term investment. Which means, patience. The fruit of the Spirit, the key word there is patience. Patience has to be your friend. It's got to be your friend. No, definitely.
Otherwise, you'll be frustrated.
You'll be
to 20 years.
You'll be frustrated, and you also give yourself unnecessary heart attacks. All right. So,
in fact, there was a gentleman who sold his shares, his Apple stock. I think he was one of the founders. He sold his Apple stock that could have been worth billions today, but because he didn't have patience, he shortchanged himself and sabotaged his destiny because he wanted to get rich tomorrow. And so this is not the place.
This is definitely not the place. This is the place where you really, really commit for the long term. I think all good things that happens in life, you have to put some work over the long term for you to see the fruits.
Amen. Well, next week we're going to be looking at these instruments in detail. We're going to be looking at these principles in much more detail. So you want to invite a friend or two, and let's get into it. It's going to get a little bit technical, but it's definitely a blessing to you. Just a quick things to remember: the retail savings bonds. If you want to get involved with that, that's 3 to 5 years. Investment, and the 1 to 2 years, that's where your emergency fund is. And so on and so forth. And 2 questions before we get off. I see here Dakota Melrose, all the way from Colorado. Hey, good morning. Good to see you. We have a quick question from Wilma, and she says, what are some of the avenues that can be used to grow your savings over time if you're still a small earner who can't afford to buy a Tesla shares yet? I don't know if there's anything called you can't afford to buy Tesla shares yet.
But some of them, they're quite expensive.
I know, but what do I do with an extra like 10,000 per month?
Yes.
This is rands. This is not dollars, by the way. That's $1,000. Maybe $700.
$700.
That's a lot.
So, I don't know whether we should cover this today or next week, but anyway, I think since the question came in today, right. So let me just touch on 3 things. Number one, so when it comes to investing in the stock market, I think that's where this question is going. So there are 3 ways you can invest in the stock market. Number one is you can buy Tesla share directly, right? And some of these shares, like Amazon, also they cost like $5,000 or $3,000. That's almost like 45 or 50,000 rands one share. So and to her point, some of these stocks the price might just look so high, right, that you can't afford to buy it with 10,000 rands. So number one is you can buy the share directly, and what this means is that your name, right? Like this example we've got Wilma, right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the share register for Tesla, they will write Wilma. Her name will be on the share register, right? Because she buys it directly. So that's the first way that you can do it. The second way that you can do it, right, which is my favorite when you are starting out, right, is you buy what are called exchange traded funds, right? It's a fancy name, but what that means is that they take so someone like a financial institution, they take a basket, right? And then they say, I want to put technology stocks in that basket, right?
So it's almost like a pick and pay.
Yes.
You know, you're walking in
with a trolley.
With a trolley,
yes.
and you're putting all this.
So you're walking in the trolley, right? And then you pick, let's say you want to pick technology shares, right?
Yeah.
So you put Tesla in there, then you put Amazon in there, then you put Apple in there, then you put Microsoft, then you put Google, then you put Facebook, then you can put all the technology stocks in that trolley, right? And then they subdivide that trolley, right, amongst, let's say, 1 million people, right? So you subdivide that trolley amongst. So now, for most exchange traded funds, right, the one share of an exchange traded fund it can cost like $5 or $10 or $20, right? But when you buy that one share of what you call exchange traded funds, you are not buying Tesla only. You are buying a piece of Tesla, a piece of Microsoft, a piece of Google, a piece of Apple, so you are buying a piece or a basket, right, of shares, right? So this is I think to me, this is the one that I really like, right, when you're starting out, because if to Wilma's question, even with 10,000, right, you can get like $700 or $800, and here each one of those exchange traded funds can cost like $50 or $20, so you can afford to buy quite a couple of them.
And it leverages your risk as well.
Yes, and then you also it's the best because you don't take too much risk, right? Because you are buying so many different companies in there. And then the last way of doing it, right, is you can give your money to someone who manages on your behalf, right? And the most popular names in South Africa, you've got Alan Gray, you've got Coronation, you've got Old Mutual, you've got Prudential, so all those guys, right? So normally what they do is they collect your 10,000, my 10,000, here 10,000, and then now it's 30, and then they go and invest that money for you. So that's the third way of doing it, right? But personally, I like the second one, and the reason is because it's cheap. It's so cheap, and also as an individual you can do it, right? So you don't need to pay someone else, right? And it's the most effective way of investing, even if you only have got like 10,000.
All right, next week we're going to be getting into further detail, and we're going to be going in deeper in how to invest and the tools that are available for you to start getting involved. There was one last question here. My wife says an Investec. I think Investec is also one of the, she worked for them, so she made sure she threw them in there to make sure that they also get a piece of this free advertising. And we have Tabelo here. She said in terms of stocks, how much can one need to start investing? I think that's...
My memory says me right. I think in South African context, you need a minimum of 500 rands.
Right.
To start.
Right. So 500 rand, that's your figure.
That's
Tabelo.
where you start. Yep.
And so, hey, I think anybody can do it. For me, really, what we talked about last week, which is I don't know if, the technical aspects of this is very important, but what we talked about last week is also key when it comes to these things. The psychology of, handling finances. The psychology behind it is, we have to move that comes in is spent to where you're thinking about your future, you're putting away, and the Bible itself, the Lord Himself said He blesses our storehouses, and if we don't have storehouses, if everything that's coming in is spent, we don't have a storehouse for Him to bless. then we miss out on that particular blessing of the storehouses. But when we start participating in these things and we start putting away, that's how you get rich. You know, you don't spend everything that comes in. You spend less and put away some.
Yeah.
Anybody can be rich. You just have to get into the habit of, hey, I'm gonna spend what did we say? Less than 56% on debt, and I'm gonna spend, you know, if you can get to 70% and make sure that the other 30 there's a portion that you give to the Lord.
Yep.
But the other 20%, man, you put it away, you save it, man, you're on your way up.
So there's something which is quite interesting, which it also took me a lot of time to learn.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say this, but I think it's gonna take also our viewers and listeners also time to comprehend.
Yeah.
So, from a psychology perspective, right? Our minds, we think in a linear fashion.
Right.
Right. So you think of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right.
Yeah.
And that's how the mind thinks. I think it's perfectly normal. That's just how the mind thinks. So a mind can comprehend something linear, but it's very difficult for your mind to comprehend exponential. Right. And what this means is that when it comes to saving and investing, right, it almost feels like the first year or the first 2 years.
Yeah.
And you're not making any progress.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden,
the exponential
kicks in. Yeah. Right. But for you to get to that all of a sudden point, you have to go through this phase, right, where it feels like it's a slow upward grind.
Yeah.
And it just takes time, and it takes some mental strength for you to even see, you know what, it seems like I'm not progressing, but I'm actually progressing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's something that it took me time to understand, but yeah.
Yeah, so this is why you got to get in the game. I mean, if you miss out on that exponential, you just hear other people's testimonies. Hey, I bought this Walmart share. I mean, older people, that's what they say when I'm in the US. They say, man, I bought this Tesla share in 1980, and then in 1981, it made me a millionaire. And you're like, well, man, I missed out on that.
Yeah.
But there was an exponential effect they call it the miracle of compound interest, right?
Yes.
It's a miracle how these things work, you know, when you start getting involved in them. And for you guys, because you have the Holy Spirit on the inside of you, it's even better. You can ask him which direction to go. I've heard of testimonies and stories where the Lord himself speaks to people and tells them, hey, this is what I would like you to invest in. This is stay or it's time for you to sell so you can move to another investment. And so for us as children of God, we actually have an advantage. And so, hey, this is fun. It's going to be awesome. But this is all the time we had for tonight. We are going to be seeing you guys next week, Wednesday. Please make sure you invite a friend or two. This is helpful information that could change and shape a generation. We love you guys. God bless you. Bye-bye.